checks on the credit union, see if they can shake hands.
Well, unforgettable scenes now. Angry depositors. That was the Rhode Island banking crisis.
20 years ago tomorrow, a local bank closed its doors. Its president disappeared along with millions of dollars.
One of the biggest stories ever now. This was the first sign of real trouble. Within a couple of months, dozens of credit unions and banks were closed. NBC 10's Brian Crandall follows up on the key players tonight.
I am declaring a bank emergency in Rhode Island.
It's kind of scary, you know. I mean, you have your money in a bank and you can't get it out.
We will never give up the fight until we get all of our money.
One of the most tumultuous times in recent Rhode Island history started 20 years ago, November 1990. The sparks began inside this bank on Federal Hill.
I didn't think that it would result in what turned out to be a major banking crisis.
Steve Caillouette was a bank examiner with the state's Department of Business Regulation, assigned to look at the books of Heritage Loan. He found millions missing and loans with no paperwork.
Which turned out to be the result of the books being doctored up to try to show fraudulent loans that didn't exist.
The bank's president, Joe Malacone Jr., suspected of taking the money. Then Attorney General Jim O'Neill recalls meeting with DBR officials.
Someone said, well, Mr. Malacone is going to a wedding in Connecticut. This is a priceless comment was made. And he's promised he's going to have this money back on Monday. I said, well, how does he intend to come up with $13 million? It's going to be a hell of a big wedding tree at that wedding, huh? Or money tree, I should say, at that wedding.
Do you know where the money went? Or
I have no idea. I don't think anybody's ever determined that. I think he just spent it. Joe Malacone lived a high life.
And within days, he vanished. And then, 20 years ago this week, Heritage closed. Now, the head of the state police, Brendan Doherty, was then a detective, along with O'Neill and other officials, trying to figure out what was going on.
When we discussed it and realized that this is probably a lot bigger than we think, and we needed to conduct an immediate investigation.
Then came questions about the stability of other banks backed by RISDIC, a private insurer made up of its member banks and credit unions. RISDIC said it was fine, but there were fears that customers would rush to take out their money. Weeks went by. Now a looming change also at the State House. Newly elected Bruce Sundlun and his team, including legal counsel Sheldon Whitehouse, would soon be taking over, and closing the RISDIC institutions was the leading option.
You could not let runs happen and have it get out of control.
Outgoing Governor Ed Dupree met with Sundlun and had other ideas.
Bruce Sundlun wanted me that day to call a press conference and announce the closing of the credit unions. I says, absolutely not.
But Sundlun, the night before being inaugurated governor, recalls being handed a letter from RISDIC. The insurer had to fold. Sundlun remembers the letter word for word, and his reaction, too.
I said, oh, shit, we got a problem.
Whitehouse says he was up all night working on the details before the inauguration.
Very few people knew what was going on, and I came up and I said, Governor, I've got the papers that close all the credit unions.
And so he did. 45 credit unions and banks closed. More than 100,000 customers, mostly shut off from their savings, many for more than a year.
To carte blanche, close all of them without a definite plan to assure the people that they were going to have their money available by a time certain, I think was just a horrible thing to do.
Well, it was somewhat treacherous, not knowing when or if you're going to get anything back.
Joseph Zenga had money frozen in a credit union and was an organizer of fellow depositors.
They were off the wall. I mean, they were doing marches, they were protesting, they were ready to do just about anything.
My car was keyed. My tires were slashed. People came through the State House smearing literally excrement on the walls.
Sundlun recalls an event in Cranston where protesters had gathered.
And as soon as they saw my car, they all gathered around it. And then they started rocking the car and hollering and pounding on the car. So I just opened the door and got out. And I walked the length of that street down the road. And people were hollering, and I thought they were I didn't know what they were going to do.
Despite the turmoil, Sundlun stands by his dramatic action.
Was closing the banks still the right decision?
Sure. Every depositor got his or her money back plus interest.
Is that the best it could have gone, do you think?
Yeah, without a doubt.
But the feds were worried enough to send a secret armored truck full of cash in case there was a run on the bigger national banks. And get this, the truck was actually lost for a while.
There was a brief drama about where on earth is the truck with the millions of dollars of cash in it.
Speaking of missing, there's still the matter of Joe Malacone. Tomorrow night, the search for the fugitive banker, plus what he has to say now, and the other causes of the crisis, politics, the red flags, and where do the banks stand now? Enough oversight, enough examiners, and in a way, you're still paying for the crisis. Find out how tomorrow night at 11. I'm Brian Crandall, NBC 10 News in Providence.